Okay, today we're talking about Neverwake, an anthology of dream horror. And my guests are the editors, Kenneth Kane and Tim Meyer. And I'm going to turn it over to them now and let them introduce themselves. So, Kenneth, you start.
I'm a horror and dark fiction writer and a freelance editor that's worked for several publishers. And Neverwake comes out September 8th.
Indeed, it does. Um, which is today because this is recorded and it will be uploaded on the 8th. So, anyway, so
Go buy
Tim,
it.
yeah. Tim, you introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Tim Meyer. I'm a horror author, short story writer, mostly of sci-fi, fantasy, thriller, and I am the co-editor of the new anthology Neverwake with Kenneth Kane, coming out today from Crystal Lake Publishing.
Okay, so what inspired the creation of this anthology?
Yeah, so I've always kind of been obsessed with dreams and dream horror, so stuff like Friday, um, oh man, Nightmare on Elm Street, Dreamscape, a lot of those like dreamy horror movies, stuff that's kind of surreal. So I had the idea. I had never seen a dream horror anthology before, so I had the idea of possibly doing one, and I had never edited anything before, so I got with Kenneth Keane, who's he's done amazing work on editing anthologies, and I pitched the idea to him, and he liked it, and we took it to Crystal Lake, and then that's kind of how it happened.
Okay, so what did you think when Tim came to you with the idea?
Well,
Tim.
I suffer a bit of a sleep issue. I have insomnia and all kinds of sleep anxiety and so forth. So I was like, this is perfect for me. This is right up my alley, right? So it was meant to be. So yeah, I had to take it on.
Okay, so could you give us a quick rundown of the stories? What can readers expect when they pick up the anthology?
Let me see. Let's open the spreadsheet here. So we have an introduction by Sadie Hartmann. Uh, Tim is good friends with Sadie, and she agreed to do that. Um, we have a story by Lee Murray, who you said that you interviewed earlier.
Yeah.
Uh, we have a story by Philip Fracassi and Gwendolyn Kiste and Eric LaRocca and Cynthia Pelayo, Todd Keisling, Laurel Hightower, Kristen Peterson, TJ Simful, Steve Raznick Tim, uh, uh, Angela Liu, Jared Nassar, Michelle Tang, Michael Bailey, Joe Koch, Pedro Ineguez. I think that's how you say his last name. Lindsay E. Gilbert and Anea Lay.
Uh,
I think
oh,
that's everyone. Oh, and
yeah.
Catherine McCarthy.
Well, that sounds like a great lineup. I mean, I know a couple of those authors, and they're certainly very talented, and I expect the other ones are as well. Um, so, how did they play with the theme?
That's a great thing. Is it's a very diverse group of writers, and we were a little worried that everybody would have that Nightmare on Elm Street kind of theme going, and actually, what we got was a very wide spectrum of different kinds of sleep stories. Some with a little bit of a sci-fi bend, and some with more fantasy bend, and then we did get some of those, but then we got some that are like a little bit more uh, literary kind of stories, and then some that are a little bit more poetic. So kind of all over the spectrum, and it was really nice to have that wide choice range of choices to go from. And you know how it is with the anthologies. I mean, you can literally like put together 3 or 4 books just because you have so many good stories, and you have to turn down like some good stories because you have a budget you're working on. So, but yeah, we could have put together so many volumes, and we just tried to put together the best one we could.
Yeah. So you mentioned, Tim, when you were talking about putting the anthology together, how you were fascinated by dream horror. So why do you think that is? Why do you think that people have such a fascination with dreams and with nightmares?
I think it's because we know like so little about them that kind of makes them scary. Like it's just such a weird thing to experience, and not everybody dreams, and everybody dreams differently. So it's just I think it's so unique to the person who is dreaming that that kind of makes them very interesting. And like for me, like I have crazy dreams. Like my dreams are super surreal and like all over the place, and like they're not grounded in reality at all. um but like I know people who have like dreams and it's basically just reality. They're just having like, you know, memories or, you know, just different experiences that are kind of very well grounded in the real world. And I think that's just like fascinating, like how our minds work when we're asleep.
Okay, Kenneth, what about you? Why do you think people find dreams so fascinating?
Sometimes when you get like in a dream, sometimes it's almost difficult to tell what's real and what's not. What's the real world? I mean, especially for someone like me who suffers from insomnia. Like sometimes I'll go, days without sleep, and it gets very hard to tell if I'm awake or not. So I think that that's a fascinating part of the dream world is the living dream world. And I guess I think that a movie like Nightmare on Elm Street kind of awakened that, and even Dreamscape before it, which I think might have been some inspiration for that movie, is you know the monsters in our dreams and how they can become real. And I think that's part of what makes us writers is we a lot of us, where do you get your ideas from? A lot of us will say, we had this dream once, or we had this experience once that involved the dream, and so it's very easy to tie into that kind of world.
So have either of you ever actually gotten an idea from a dream? As I personally have never done that, but I
Oh,
know a few authors who have. So have you two ever done that?
yeah, I,
Yeah,
I definitely have. Yeah.
I've done it too. Yeah, just like not necessarily whole ideas, but like just parts of things. Like I'll dream about something that's just like really weird, and it's like, oh, that I could use that in like a scene. Actually did it today when I was writing a story. Something I dreamed last night kind of like made its way into the story. So yeah, it does happen.
Yeah, I know a
I've
lot of
actually written stories while I was dreaming. So like I'll wake up and try write that apart, and sometimes I'll go to like sleep the next night, and it'll pick up right where it left off, almost like a movie. It's bizarre. So
yeah, I mean, I know a few authors who've said that, they've dreamed I've known a couple who've said they've dreamed their entire plot of their novel. I
That's
mean,
awesome.
I guess my brain's just weird enough when it's awake. It doesn't need to
yeah.
You know,
uh okay, so which one of the stories or particular a story stood out for you personally from the anthology?
oh man, there's so many. We did one of these interviews earlier, and I picked Philip Fraccassi's story because it was just such a cool story about a dream journal. So I'll try to pick something else, not to be repetitive. But I'll go with Eric LaRocca's story just
Mhm.
because the way he writes is just so fascinating. And just like the weird, bizarre, surreal, like it's a story that literally feels like you're dreaming it when you're reading it. And I like really connected with it. And it's gruesome. Just it's just a story that I think people are gonna, you know, get excited about.
I
Uh,
I, uh, I agree with that. That's a great story. I had originally picked Catherine McCarthy's story because originally we had Laird Barron, and he had to drop off for health reasons, and so we were able to pick another story, and we revisited a bunch of stories, and we picked her story, I was glad that we had that opportunity to take her story. But I'll say for this time, I'll say T.J. Simfill's story because it's
Oh
such a fun
yeah.
story that I think that a lot of us can relate to.
It's so unique. The structure of it is
Yeah,
different. It's more experimental.
like apostolary horror. So
Yeah, Yeah, it's like, not to give too much away, but it's like it's a sleep experiment, and it's like somebody filling out a questionnaire, and but like it's done in like it's telling a whole complete story when he
Yeah.
does it. It's super cool.
And if you've
Yeah.
ever been in a sleep study, which I've been in many sleep studies, um, you get these forms after a minute, you have to fill them out. So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Kudos to him for writing that type of story because I've written an epistolary novella, and it is hard to do that. So yeah, if he pulled that off that well, then kudos to him because yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of the more difficult forms to write. So, did anything in the stories surprise you, or did any of the stories take a direction that you weren't expecting?
I'll say Michael Bailey's story kind of surprised me
Hmm.
because it was almost really dreamlike. I expected something more, a little. I mean, his story was a little out there, and I really liked that for this anthology. And I've worked with him in other anthologies, and his work has been more, less like that. So I was a little surprised, and it worked really well. So yeah, I like that one a lot. What about you, Tim? Anything that surprised you?
I mean, they all kind of surprised me in one way or the other, but if I had to pick one, Steve Rasnick Tem wrote one that was like really I just wasn't expecting it to be like that heavy, and it's like it's a heavy story to digest, like content wise. So yeah, that one definitely stuck out as one that surprised me.
Okay, so what was your favorite thing about editing the anthology?
I'll
Oh
let Tim
man,
answer this one first.
for me, we had talked about this earlier, but for me it was sending out the acceptances to the authors. Like that was the best part. I really enjoyed the entire process though, and it was my first time doing it. So I really did everything from kickstarting it to just reading, like would we get like 700, 800 stories, something like that.
Yep.
um just that whole process was kind of exciting and fun. Yeah, but like when you get to tell an author that like they're accepted into it, and just like getting their reaction, especially some of the authors in there have never had something published before, at least at a pro rate. um that was like really cool and rewarding for me.
Yes, it was probably the author's favorite part too.
Yes, having been on the other side of it, I can definitely tell you yes.
For me, it's always like a puzzle, right? Like I love the fact that you get these great stories, and you get to like look at them in a way and go, how can I make this better? How can I help it like along, just to tweak it, or like you want to try to make it the best possible story it can be without taking away their voice, right? So I really enjoy that process of digging into the stories and finding the problems with them, and trying to work those out. That's my favorite part of editing anything.
Okay, so what was the hardest part of editing the anthology? Did you run into any unexpected issues?
Well, I think we talked about this earlier when we said the Kickstarter. Like this is the first time I ran it. I ran a Kickstarter, and I think maybe Tim's first time. So we were
Yep.
very inexperienced, and we have to get a lot of thanks to James Aquilone, who gave us a lot of tips and advice early on and helped us out a great deal. He's a great editor and a great guy, a great writer too, and so that was hard to deal with. The other stuff I've done a lot of anthologies, so I have a very methodical way of doing things that thankfully Tim was easy to embrace. So I have like a set procedure that I go through, but that was really hard because neither of us, I think, knew some of the tricks to Kickstarter.
Yeah, that was a lot to learn on its own. Just the promotion aspect of getting that set up was just crazy. But I mean, as far as editing the anthology itself, I think Ken was so organized that it just made the whole process like super easy. I don't think we got really tripped up or held up on anything. It surprisingly very smoothly. So, and I can only thank Ken for just being so organized and having everything together. Kept me in line.
We
Okay.
kept each other in line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that you've tried Kickstarter, would you do it again for an anthology project or for one of your own projects?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would ever do it for like a novel per se, but anthologies are kind of perfect because they are pretty expensive to produce. If you're doing it, if you're paying authors a good rate, it's expensive. If you're purchasing good cover art, and so like it can be expensive. But the good thing about Kickstarter and how we kind of approached it going in was just set it up like we're selling pre-sales for it, and then if we have enough, then the anthology is funded, and if we don't, then it isn't. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a good way to get anthologies funded because they are so expensive, and you never know how they're going to do.
That's the truth. I mean, a lot of anthologies, like they probably don't make their money back, right? Which is why you see a lot of like smaller publishers like maybe not paying that higher rate. But that's something that I've always kind of strived, is to try to get my writers the best possible pay, and this is the way I could do it. This is the way we could do it together, and you want to do that because you want them to have those pro rates, right? You want them to be able to call themselves active members of the HWA at some point, or in the Science Fiction Writers of America. I mean, you want to be able to give them what they need to get there, and also you want to have a successful anthology. And there's some kind of mix in there in between. You can go high end where you have like all writers that you invite, and you have to pay lots and lots of money, or you can go low end. But there's like a mix in the middle somewhere where I think that you can find a nice balance and make a really good book. Not that any of those other books aren't really really good.
Mm. Yeah, I like Kickstarter myself. A couple of anthologies I've been an author in have done Kickstarter to fund them, and they got published, and we got paid. So
Yeah.
so it worked out very nicely all around. And I like Kickstarter because it's a very supportive community too, for especially for authors and also for comic book artists and other indie creatives as well.
And like Tim said, really what you're doing is you're doing a pre-sale where you're like, like it's pre-order. I mean, people who supported our campaign got copies of Neverwake, what, 3-4 months ahead of release
back
date? So
in
they've
like
had it for months.
April, May.
Yeah.
I think we started shipping them out. So yeah, they've had
Yeah.
it for months. So that
So
was
it's
like
a
a
really cool thing to be able to get that book 3 or 4 months before it's out, and you're the only person that has it. Well, you and the 200 other people.
Yeah, I recently supported a couple of Kickstarter campaigns, and I got my little prizes, and I got a couple of books on the way. So yeah, looking forward to that. So now tell me about some of the other projects you've worked on, some of your own books. Little self promo time here.
self promo. Awesome. Well, like I said earlier, I also am a novelist. So I had a new novel come out in August, the beginning of August, Lacuna's Point, through Dark Lit Press. So that's been out about a month, and you can buy that pretty much anywhere. And then today, the date that we're recording this, my novella Rainbow Filth just came out through Ghoulish Books. So that's the two latest things. But you could find my stuff all over Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever books are sold.
Okay, you have to explain that title, Rainbow Fill, because that is definitely
Yeah,
intriguing.
Rainbow Filth. It's the name Rainbow Filth actually comes from the story because it's actually the name of a drug, a psychedelic drug that the characters in my book take, and they believe that it actually opens up a portal to another dimension. So it's actually told kind of in an epistolary form. It's one kid being interviewed by a detective, and it's like the transcript of that interaction, and it cuts back to that, between that and him telling the story of what happened to all of his friends and why they're all missing. So it's short. It's only like 100 pages, but it's pretty fun.
Hmm. Sounds very interesting. Okay, so what have you been up to, Kenneth? What books have you
Oh, I've
got
been
out
busy.
there?
I have my backlist recently has been coming out through Crossroads Press. So much thanks to the two Davids over there for helping with that. And I have a short story in Shakespeare Unleashed, and I have a short story in the Unioverse anthology that just came out through Hex Publishers. And I have my 5th short story collection that came out from Cemetery Gates Media called Hell, Delaware. It's like a bunch of stories set around a town where I kind of destroyed the town. And then, of course, Never Wake, September 8th. And then I have another anthology that I added this year coming out September 19th called October Screams.
Okay, so I'm assuming that's a bit Halloween themed, or
It is all Halloween themed stories. So it was a fun one.
okay. So do you have any upcoming projects? Sneak peek you want readers to know about?
Oh, well, we got some things we're working on, but I think maybe it's a little early to talk about them. Do you have any books that you're working on, Tim?
I am always working on something. I have a couple not. What? Yeah.
I said same here. Yeah, always working
Oh
on stuff.
yeah. Always working on something. So I have a couple novels that are like in the pipeline, and one I'm just waiting on a contract for before I can announce it. But it looks like it might happen in 2024. So, but that's pretty much it. And then, like Ken said, we're working on something behind the scenes that we can't really talk about yet, but hopefully soon.
Okay, so we will leave our viewers with that delightful tidbit that there's something in the pipeline, and we'll wrap up the interview here. And I'd like to thank you both for being our guests today, and tell everyone where they can find you and your books. Kenneth, you start.
You can find all my social media links and my publishing history on kennethwkane.com, and you can track me down and talk to me and everything. I'm cool with that.
People can
Okay.
stalk you there.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
Okay, where can people stalk you, Tim?
People can stalk me pretty much on any social media website that they prefer to stalk me on. And you can also find me at timmeyerwrites.com.
Okay, so again, thanks for being our guest today, and thank the viewers for watching. And that's all for now.
Thanks
Bye.
for having us.
Thank you.